You are now watching the official YouTube channel for the largest basketball manager game in the world. Join at BuzzerBeater.com if you think you can beat the buzzer.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Bubbles Buzzer Beater, the official Buzzer Beater YouTube channel. I know we are in the off season still before season 65 gets up and going, and I had a couple videos that I wanted to make here in the next week or so as the season's getting started. But Buzzer Beater hit us with an unexpected big change that I wanted to talk about, and that is the LeBron Effect. So you can see right here in the news an explanation of what the LeBron Effect is. And this was actually hinted out yesterday via the social media pages. So BuzzerBeater had a sneak peek into the news post that they do before every season, and they mentioned that, quote, "A new change is coming. We are dubbing it the LeBron rule, in which players will now start skill deterioration at the age of 35 instead of age 34. And then just, did a hashtag Fountain of Youth, which I think connects pretty well to that. But in the news post that was posted today by Alonzo, and I assume was signed off on by BuzzerBeater Marin, it just lays out what exactly it is. So once again, it just says medical advancements, nutritional supplements, cryo chambers, etc. They've all had a great effect on increased player durability and have extended careers of greatest basketball stars. Following suit, we are pushing the start of deterioration age for all buzzer beater players to 35. And then the big thing that caused some chaos and that I wanted to touch on a little bit was that they mentioned the change has already been implemented starting today. So this has been an ongoing debate about, when changes in buzzer beater occur, what's the notice that should be given to the user base? How much notice should managers be getting for these updates? And I think it depends a little bit on what type of update it is. But you can see that almost immediately there was a LeBron Effect 35 years forum posted where Burnspin and also Joe Maverick, I think, laid out kind of the biggest concern with this. And it has nothing to do with the feature itself, but I will go into the pros and cons of this new feature where skill decline doesn't start till 35. But both Burnspin and Joe Maverick were touching on how there was just no notice given. It seemed like it came very out of the blue. So you'll see Burnspin said, "I'm not sure yet if I think this change is positive or not, but I'm definitely sure is that this kind of change should be made public in advance," which I 100% agree with. And then Joe just said, "I agree. I don't see the point of this change. 34 was good, and I don't remember anyone complaining about it. We will see. What is a mistake for sure is to not warn the users one season in advance." And then just talking about kind of the lack of communication. So this is kind of a theory on what I think happened with this, because this is such a major change, but minor adjustment in the game engine or the way that it functions. It seemed very much like something where the BBs, primarily BB Marin, because I feel like this was either something that he fully implemented himself, decided that this is what he was going to do, or he made the final approval check mark to get this going. It seemed like this was an easy change because in coding and to actually do it on the back end, you're literally just changing a number of skill decline starts at 35 rather than 34. So it was probably something where the BBs, specifically BB Marin, wanted to show that they're still updating the game, making adjustments, but this felt like a change that came out of the blue, was just sort of picked out of a hat that he just said, "Yep, we're going to do this season." And the timing of it is really, really bad. So you'll see it's posted today, June 14th. And if you go over to your schedules that all of you can go to, you'll see that the first league game is literally tomorrow. And this is a major change because not only is it impacting players that are currently on people's rosters, but there's so many people who went and did roster changes or put players on the transfer list or sold players, bought players for a certain amount without knowing that this change was going to happen, that it's just pretty unfair to those managers, I think, to give them such short notice on how that impacts it. So, like, as most of you know, on the YouTube channel, we have Leboic, or Le Crimson Chin, who was on our team for a long time. And I ended up just selling him, within the last week because he was turning 34, and I didn't want a player on my team that was going to be 34 and decreasing in skills. And now he's not going to. So he's actually a player where if this had come out a week prior or the middle of last season, if the BuzzerBeater's developers had said, hey, this is something that's going to happen going into season 65, just be aware that 34-year-olds will not decrease in skills starting next season. This is a player that I actually would have held on to and would still be on my team. I also think he might have sold for a little bit more money as well if other managers knew that he wasn't going to be decreasing in skills. And then there is the flip side where if we go over to my other team, this is the kind of pros or the other side of the coin, is that it also does help a lot of managers. So on my USA team, I do have some players that are 34 as well that I've kept on my team. So on the other hand, my Utopia team definitely takes a little bit of a hit where I lost a player that I probably would have kept due to this change. But now 2 players on my USA team, both of my starting center power forward as well as my backup depth power forward center, both of them are 34 and won't decrease in skills. So obviously it's like 2 sides of the coin where it benefits a lot of managers, at the same time leaves a lot of managers really frustrated because there wasn't a lot of notice. And I think that's the biggest issue, is not the LeBron effect itself, but the way that it was communicated and the way that it was laid out, that just didn't seem very organized and didn't seem very thought out. It seemed very much like something that BB Marin just decided last minute that he was going to add into the game, so that we had something in season 65 that's showing that quote-unquote progress is being made, or hey, we're still doing things. And I just don't think it was needed. I mean, I think this was something they could have pushed out another season or made an announcement at the halfway mark of last season, because it talks about, modern basketball is evolving and goes through how some of the game engine has been tweaked for this season as well. I don't like the idea of implementing changes just for the sake of doing it. And it didn't seem like there was a whole lot of thought that was put into this. It just seemed like it was something that was easy to code on the back end, and BB Marin just went for. He might come out and say that it wasn't his decision or more rationale behind it, but I know a lot of people are frustrated with how this was communicated, and I think it totally makes sense why people are upset, because league games start tomorrow. So the super late notice is not ideal. What I do want to go through is just the pros and cons of this, because what's done is done. I don't think it's going to be like reversed or anything, so we might as well talk about the feature itself and how it impacts BuzzerBeater and if I like it or not. For this LeBron Effect age 35, as most of you know, the age of deterioration for older players' skills used to be 34. And I personally thought 34 was great. I thought that lined up pretty well with NBA players when they skill decline, as well as like other athletes around the world. And what some people will talk about, and you'll see in this forum if you wanted to leave your thoughts, but lots of people are giving their opinions on it and talking about, the changes as well as what it looks like. And I agreed a lot with JS8 of saying, age 35 doesn't seem like the standard to me, at least for NBA players, which is primarily, what I'm connected with, what I pay attention to. I know for NBA, there's certain players, Steph Curry, LeBron James, James Harden's getting up there. tons and tons of others who are like in their mid 30s and are still, doing really well. But I think that the average player should be the rule, not the exception. These superstars are the exception to the rule, not the quote-unquote standard. And I feel like most players in the NBA start to really decline in skills around age 31 through 33. Age 33 in BuzzerBeater used to be the original skill deterioration age, and then they pushed it up by one, which was 34, which I think was fine. I think it made sense. I don't think it was a bad change at all. 35 starts to get to the point where I just feel like it's not as realistic or real, doesn't connect with realism as they are saying. One of the main reasons that they did it, or so they said, was for the realism aspect because of those medical advancements, nutritional supplements, cryo chambers, etc. And I think while that's in theory correct, I still think that there's a lot of players who start declining at age 31, 32, 33 in the NBA. And then even if you look at football, I know that the 2024 Euros just started as well. If you look at the Euros team, so we'll just look at Germany, who's the host nation for the UEFA European Championship. You'll see all of the player ages here. You have one 34-year-old in Toni Kroos. You have another one in Thomas Müller. Gundogan's 33. And then, of course, you have Neuer and the goalkeepers that are a little bit older in general. But for the most part, like, all of these players aren't going to be in their mid to late 30s because that's not the standard. Those few players are the exception to the rule. They're not the... So I still think that 35 is just a little bit older. Thomas Müller doesn't even start for the German national team anymore because he's getting up there in age at 34, and I think 35 is just a little bit older. This could be something that you guys disagree with, so if you do, please let me know. If you think 35 is natural for skill decline, just let me know. I am curious to hear other people's opinions, but it does seem like a bit old to me. As for the pros, I think there are a lot of pros that actually come with this. So even though I don't think it's as connected to realism as the news report's saying, some pros of this is from a transfer list aspect. I do think that this will help balance out the transfer list a little bit more, where players who are 31, 32, 33, 34 years old will probably sell for slightly more money than they used to because that extra season that you can play them before their skills start to deteriorate. So I think it will actually help level out the transfer list like playing field from younger players to older players, because for older players especially, there's always a big drop off between, hey, I'm buying a 31-year-old for this much, I'm buying a 33-year-old for this much. There's a really big drop off that's steep in regards to how much players who are 33, 34, and now 35 will sell for. And I think it does actually help level the playing field a bit there. And then it does also help homegrown teams and micronation teams a little bit more for like national teams, I think, because you can keep those players who are good around for an extra season. I was actually curious to see if anyone in the homegrown thread has talked about it. I don't think so yet. Yeah, it doesn't look like anyone in the homegrown thread has talked about the LeBron Effect yet, but I guarantee you that a lot of these homegrown managers that just fully draft their own team and don't pick up players off the transfer list, this is probably a change that helps them out as well. That's obviously a very small group of managers, similar to like the micronation, but I do think there's some positives to this LeBron effect where players don't drop till age 35 as well. So yeah, and like I said, I think the biggest thing is that people you'll see this another season, another miscommunication. So there's obviously been some pushback, but I don't think the pushback has primarily been about the change itself. It's been how it's been implemented and how it was communicated. So even if we think about previous seasons when we talk about, let's go to the news report from last season, for example. So for the auto bid feature, the auto bid is something that was talked about for a while and was something that a lot of people were pushing for, and was implemented a little bit earlier. It also didn't impact anything like game engine wise or planning wise. It was a feature that just impacted how you get players, not the players themselves. So that's where that change, I think, was totally fine. Pickup games was another one where pickup games, if we look back through previous changes, pickup games were something that, once again, were a feature that could be implemented with shorter notice because it doesn't actually impact like the players or the game engine itself. It just impacts people willing or people able to test out tactics and play their players and rosters and lineups against bots and other opponents. This is something that does have a bigger effect on not just the current season, but how people adjusted their rosters from last season, as well as how they plan for like longer term planning as well as mid-term planning. So I think there was actually a comment in here of someone that was talking about this as well that I read. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Scroll down, you'll see some other opinions on here as well. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so right here, you'll see, here are my 2 cents on should have been announced or at least mentioned that it's being discussed earlier pile. Agent skill drops are super important in mid to long-term planning, and that's, complete facts. That's something that impacts people's decision-making at the end of last season and this season. And what's done is done now, but you can definitely understand the frustration about it. So all in all, I do think that it's going to be a change that I don't think was necessarily needed for 35 versus 34 years old, but I do think it's a change that would work just fine. I don't think there's going to be a lot of pushback on it once it's actually up and running. I think it was just the initial implementation that people had an issue with. So once again, that sneak peek, really good Photoshop right there on the LeBron, but that's all I wanted to discuss today. I will have a couple more videos up within the next week as the season's getting up and going, but please leave your thoughts down below on this video on if you like this change or not, as well as if you have any thoughts, concerns, comments on how it was implemented or communicated as it was being implemented yesterday for this season 65. All right, that's going to do it. I'll talk to you guys later, and I hope you guys have a great season. Bye.